Thanks for joining us. Today we're going to talk about some unique temperature sensor configurations and accessories and options that can help you solve unique and challenging temperature sensor applications. A couple of minor and quick housekeeping items. We will be recording this webinar today, so if you're not able to watch the entire thing or you have to take off before we finish, it will be archived on our YouTube channel and on our website. So if you have questions, you can come back and watch it at a later date. Please input any questions. We will be doing a Q&A at the end of the presentation. That will be over on the right-hand side of the screen. Please input any questions into the chat feature, and we will answer those at the end of the presentation today. My contact info is on the screen. If you've got any other questions, please reach out at any time. We are using a new webinar hosting service or format, so we'd very much value your feedback as well. So please email me. You can find us on LinkedIn and Facebook and Twitter as well, or you can reach out to marketing@workaci.com. So with that, we'll get started. Thanks again for joining us today. All of the products that we're going to talk about today are manufactured right here in Middleton, Wisconsin in our ISO 9001 certified facilities. We hope to discuss three main topics today. The first, we are going to show some additional options for our common or standard temperature sensors, things like our duct and immersion and bullet probes and stainless plates. Secondly, we hope to show some additional configurations that you may not be familiar with that can help solve some challenging or unique applications. And then third, we're going to show some mounting accessories that can save time and money, not just on the product cost, but also on the installation as well, and help solve some of those unique applications. The theme being that there are no two temperature sensor applications are the same. So that's why we have dozens, if not hundreds of different options and configurations and accessories that are available to help you minimize the materials cost and the installation labor. You don't have to shoehorn a one-size-fits-all solution into an application where it may not be designed to fit. With that, we're going to talk about some of our standard configurations. Many of you are familiar with our probe-style sensors, like a standard duct sensor that you see here shown. We have a number of different probe lengths available. In stock here, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 8, 12, 18, 24, 36, and 48-inch probes, all in stock that we can put any type of thermistor or RTD or transmitter into. We also have a number of different wire types available. So depending on the temperature requirements of the application, the plenum rating requirements of the application, and the cost requirements of the application, we have a wire type that will suit that particular applications, whether they're the standard ones like you see here in the middle of the screen. That's the standard wire that would come with a bullet probe or a duct sensor. And we also have longer lengths available. 6, 10, and 20 feet are the default longer lengths, and we've done much longer lengths also by custom or special order. We have a number of housing types available, depending again on the cost requirements, the temperature requirements, and the weatherproof requirements of the application. Point being that any of these previous slides, whether it's the probe length, the wire type, or the housing type, any combination of these previous slides we can do. So for example, if you happen to come across an application where you need a 36-inch duct sensor that needs to be mounted outdoors, well, we can do that. If you need a short 1-inch or 2-inch duct sensor that's mounted indoors, well, we can do that as well. And we can pair that with any type of wire to suit the plenum ratings or the temperature ratings of that application. Moving on to some of the lesser known configurations that can also help solve some of these unique or challenging applications. Start by talking about our rigid averaging sensors. They're going to look very similar to a standard duct sensor, but whereas a duct sensor has one sensing element mounted at the tip of the probe, a rigid averaging sensor has multiple sensors mounted throughout the length of the probe to give you an average across that space. So whether it's mounted in a duct or a mixing box, they can be mounted vertically, pointed down to measure, to get an average across the stratification of the duct or the mixing box. And these are available in 12, 18, 24, 36, or 48-inch lengths. And it's a great solution for where you don't have the space to get in and snake a copper averaging or a flexible averaging sensor across that duct. And available in all of the standard enclosures that we showed in the previous slide. Many of you are familiar with our flexible averaging sensor. That's a plenum rated wire element, very easy to bend and fit into tight spaces as well. We do, the highlight I wanted to point out today is that we do have these available in lengths of up to 50 feet for thermistors. As air handlers get bigger and bigger, we're seeing requirements for longer and longer averaging sensors. So with a flexible averaging sensor, we can build those of up to 50 feet. And for a copper averaging, we can build those up to 100 feet in length. So for thermistors, 50 feet is the longest we can do. For RTDs and 4-to-20 or analog transmitters, we can build those in lengths of up to 100 feet. And we can do custom lengths as well. Many of you may be familiar with our StrapOn type sensors, which are great for retrofit applications where you don't want to sink a new well into a pipe. But we do have the ability for these to measure pipes as small as 1 1/4 inches up to 10-inch in pipe size. And again, available in all of the different housings that you're familiar with. One of our newer products is our Glycol Bottle, a thermal buffer solutions for low temp refrigerators, freezers, and cryogenic applications. We can provide these bottles that you see over here on the left side of the screen. We can provide the bottle by itself. We can provide it with a L-shaped mounting bracket. We can provide it filled with a food grade glycol solution. We can provide the glycol solution separately and by itself. We can also provide it with the sensor already installed and pre-filled with the glycol solution so that it's ready to install right out of the package. We also have an option for these bottles to be filled with small glass beads instead of the glycol solution. So whatever the specific requirements of your application for these low temp or thermal buffer applications, we can meet that. Many of you are also familiar with our stainless plate sensors. That's a great solution for high traffic areas. But we can also do these with a push button override and or a RS-232 communication jack. So you can still get that, that timed override without, or in that small, discrete, flush mount stainless plate that fits well in those high traffic areas. We also have different types of machined thermal wells available. Our standard wells are made of 304 stainless, but we do have some options for 316 stainless in the standard lengths of 2.5, 4, and 6 inches. We see some of the 316 requirement for food service and pharmaceutical applications, and we do have that 316 well available. One of our newer configurations is what we call the pipe mount, and it's shown here on the left side of the screen. It's a short 1.1-inch brass probe, and it's a bit hard to see from this photo, but right there where the cursor is, you've got it's a crescent-shaped probe. So for small pipes, say less than 3 inches in diameter, that crescent shape provides a great contact between the sensor and the probe to very accurately measure the temperature from within that pipe. You can see here that little notch on the back side of that probe. It allows a secure place to tie down a wire tie so the sensor can be strapped securely to the pipe without that wire tie slipping off. This is our standard wire. 2 feet of standard wire is what comes by default. And these are available also with the full length of wire options that we had talked about a few minutes ago. Our button sensors provide a small, discrete way to measure temperature in a space. They're available in 2 metal styles, brass and stainless, as well as a plastic button sensor. Any of the thermistors or RTDs can be built into these sensor housings. These metal ones ship with a lock nut as well as a drywall anchor for mounting. So they're very quick and easy to install. They can simply be, punch a small hole into the drywall, and these can easily be installed. It's also very common that these are mounted in the ceilings, either through the drywall or through ceiling tiles. And it's a very small, discrete way to measure temperature sensor in a space where someone may not want to see or that larger room sensor, or there's no box or no suitable location for that. We also have Class 1, Div 1 rated explosion-proof enclosures that can be fitted for wall mount, duct mount, or fitted with a well for immersion or pipe mount. And these are suitable for all intrinsically safe requirement and intrinsically safe applications. And again, any thermistor, RTD, or transmitter can be paired with these. Lastly, we have BACnet MSTP communicating sensors. Very easy to set up, address, and get connected to your network. So we're seeing more and more applications and requirements for just monitoring, or if you don't want to use up additional inputs on your controller, you can get a temperature or humidity sensor and get it on your network. And it's a very cost-effective way to do that. We have most of the configurations that we've talked about previously are available with BACnet MSTP sensors. And coming very soon, we have Modbus RTU versions of these same sensors as well. So stay tuned. We'll be releasing some information shortly about the Modbus versions of these. But right now, we do have BACnet MSTP available in most of the configurations that we've talked about and that you're familiar with. Moving on, today we're going to conclude the presentation by talking about a few of the mounting accessories that we have that can really help you save time and installation labor upon setting up and installing all of our sensors. Starting with our freeze stat and averaging accessories, these wire tie brackets that you see on the right here, these ship by default with all of our averaging sensors and at no extra cost. And we do have some additional accessories for freeze stats and mounting brackets as well. We have the plastic universal clip that can fit both the freeze stat capillary and the averaging sensor capillary, available in packages of 6 or 50. And we also have the copper capillary clips that fit the copper averaging sensors and the flexible wire averaging sensors. And these are available individually or in packages of 50. For our wall mount sensors, both temp and humidity and CO2, we do offer some mounting plates. These are used to mount a vertical sensor over a horizontally mounted junction box, or to cover up a large hole from a thermostat or other sensor in retrofit applications. These are made of the same material as our standard wall sensors, both our R and R2 housings, so they match the color exactly. We also have locking covers that can help keep prying fingers and away from any sensor that has adjustable features like set point or adjustable displays. Not shown here, but we do offer foam pads that can be affixed to the back of any room sensor housing to help insulate the sensor from any draft that might come from the backside, through the wall. So we recommend the foam pads if a sensor has to be placed on an exterior wall, and we can either provide the pads separately. They just have a simple adhesive back that can be mounted or applied to the back of the wall sensor, or we can install the pads onto the housings here at the factory. For our immersion sensors, as well as our StrapOn sensors and the pipe mount sensors, we have two different types of thermal compound or heat sink compound, both a silicon-based and a non-silicon-based grease are available. For our bullet probes, we have two very inexpensive, simple ways to mount bullet probes, and these are kind of a universal solution to very cost-effectively install bullet probes. They can be attached to a duct, to a grate covering a damper, or numerous different applications where you want a cost-effective and fast way to get your temperature sensor installed. For our stainless plate sensors, we offer tamper-proof screws and as well as the bits that can be used to turn these. For our strap-on sensors, we can offer the additional hose clamps so you can daisy chain these together to fit a pipe as large as needed. And then lastly today, we have a number of different compression fittings and reducers available. These little guys can be lifesavers. They can be worth their weight in gold, especially on retrofit applications. For example, our standard immersion sensor fittings are 1/2-inch NPT. So these reducers allow you to install a new immersion sensor into an existing well of a different size. The compression fittings allow you to hold a probe into place where a box may not be available, or other challenging applications where you may not be able to fit a box into. So these little things, they don't look like much, but they can certainly be worth their weight in gold. In addition to all of the things that I've talked about today, and I did throw a lot of different things at you here today, we have custom options available. So if there's something that you're looking for that you don't see on our website, or something that I haven't talked about today, it doesn't mean that we can't do it. You see a list of common applications on the left side of the screen. No two applications are the same. You don't have to shoehorn a standard or a one-size-fits-all sensor into your application when there might be a better solution out there. And you don't have to overbuy your sensors as well. So you don't have to waste wire or buy a waterproof or weatherproof box that by default when that may not be needed. So with that, that's going to conclude the presentation portion of our webinar today. We're going to open it up for questions. Before we move there, I would again like to say thanks for joining us today. If you've got suggestions about future webinars that you'd like to see us talk about, please reach out to us. Like I mentioned, the marketing@workaci.com email address. You can also comment on our various social media on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter as well. We're happy to hear from you about future presentations. And with that, let's answer some of the questions. I do have a few questions that were emailed into me beforehand. I'll get to those as well, and as well as the ones that have been put into the chat. One question is our standard wells available in longer lengths? And yes, by our standard wells, both the standard 304 wells, the machined and the fabricated wells, the standard lengths are 2.5, 4, and 6 inches. We do have lengths up to 24 inches available. We recommend when you go longer that you go into a machined well. So we do have those available. Please reach out for the specifics regarding availability and price, but we do have longer wells available. Next question is, can button sensors be painted? And sure. You know, obviously, if you paint over a button sensor, whether it's the plastic or the stainless or brass, it's going to slow the response time, but there's no real way to measure or know how much that's going to affect. But painting over the sensor isn't going to inherently damage the sensor in any way. Can longer probes be inserted in water? And the answer is yes. We see it, that common application for that for longer duct style sensors where people will want to measure the temperature of a tank. So they'll insert the sensor downward from the top of the tank or from the lid into the tank itself. All of our probes are 304 stainless and they're sealed one-piece probes. So there's nothing inherent about the probe that is going to leak. Keep in mind that the probes are 304 stainless, so there are certain materials that can be corrosive. So salt water, chlorine, situations like that can cause the probe, or not can, will cause the probe to corrode. But if it's like a sump tank or a condensate tank for its standard water, no trouble there at all. What options do you have for sensors without a box? Good question. Thanks for asking. I should have mentioned that back when we talked about our enclosures. So Any of the probes that we do are available without a box. We can provide them with mounting flanges. We can provide them with those compression fittings and various lead lengths as well. So any of the sensors that we do, whether it's just a probe style sensor or even an averaging style sensor, we can provide those without a box if needed. Do you have anything for measuring slab temperature? Sure. We've seen that application a number of times. Typically, people will have a conduit or some type of tubing run under a cement slab, for snow melt systems. And we would recommend using a bullet style sensor or probe style sensor with longer leads to get back out to the end of the conduit or tubing. And we also recommend those that we have the ability to put heat shrink on the end of any of our probes to kind of help seal up where the probe meets or where the wire comes out of the probe. For those slab temp applications, they're a bit challenging because you never know. It's hard to get that sensor or that conduit perfectly level. You don't want water to pool up around the sensor, but we have seen our sensors work in these applications successfully for years and years. Another question is, do you offer any connectors? And I assume you mean like fittings or connectors that can attach to the lead wires. And that answer is yes as well. The most common one that we have available is a 1/4-inch spade connector that we can attach to the back end of any of our lead wires, so they can just snap into the spade, the male connectors at the controller. We also have a number of custom options available as well. So if there's a certain connector that you're looking for to add to any of our sensors, please reach out. And if we don't have it, it's very likely that we do have the ability to source it. So we're happy to put together a quote or get you samples, which I should have mentioned. Any of the parts that we've talked about, if you want samples to test out to see if they suit your application, please reach out. Happy to do so. So we're going to get into the chat and see what questions you have. One is, please explain the different wire types. Sure. The main wire types that we have are, one is called a zip wire, and then we have two different types of plenum rated wire. The difference between the two different types of plenum rated wire are mainly the temperature requirements. So we have one that's got a lower temperature rating that's less expensive, and then we have one that's got a higher temperature rating that is a bit more expensive. That zip wire, it does not carry a plenum rating, but it is our lowest cost wire available. We do have those available in pretty much whatever length is needed. And if you need the specific requirements, the temperature requirements of that wire, let me know. Thanks, Mike, for sending in a question, and I'd be happy to get that the specific temperature requirements of that wire as well. They're all shielded, jacketed wires. Jesse asks, reduces down to 1/8-inch NPS, and yeah, we do have reducers that can go down to as low as 1/8 inch. And let's look at what other questions we have. Question, how do I select an immersion sensor? If the pipe is 8 inches, should I select on size or less? Is there a minimum size that I can select for a specific pipe? Good question. We generally recommend for both duct and immersion sensors that the probe or well is inserted anywhere from 1/4 to 1/3 of the way into the stream. For immersion sensors specifically, if you insert too far, it can create turbulence and potentially block flow. So we recommend, for example, for an 8-inch pipe, we would recommend a 2.5-inch immersion sensor. That length is the actual insertion length. That's the length from the base of the threads to the tip of the well. So that's the full insertion length of that sensor. For a 10-inch pipe, you could use either a 2.5 or a 4-inch sensor would work well. Question, will there be a BACnet room sensor that will have a set point slider? And that's coming soon. So I would like to see the specs. So Chuck, if you could send over the details of specifically what you're looking for, I would like to take a look at that. But that is something that we definitely hope to have in the future. Maurice says, does ACI offer any type of solution for freestanding refrigerators or freezers for commercial and specifically hospital use? We do have low temp freezer and refrigerator sensors. We also have those available in wireless configurations. Wireless is it's very application specific. So we have had people use wireless in those types of applications before, but it's not a one size fits all solution. So if we would be very, very interested in talking to you about it, and we can get you samples and details about that to see if that wireless would meet your application. We've also had people use our standard wired sensors in freestanding or refrigerator or freezer applications where people build connectors into them so they can easily be plugged in and unplugged and moved around. With that, I think that answers all of the questions. There was David Gallardo asks, what is the range of the BACnet sensors? I'm assuming you mean the temperature range that's covered. I'm not 100% sure of what that is off the top of my head, but I do see your email here, David, so I will reach out to you offline with that. I will get that information and get that over to you. Alfonso asks, in what applications do you use the rigid averaging sensors? Those are for mixed air applications where you might have a very tight location and not able to get a copper averaging or a flexible averaging sensor snaked across both sides, or you might not be able to access one side or the other to tie that copper averaging sensor to both sides of that space. They can be mounted vertically, so from the top, so you can get an average of the stratification. We also see that's the most common application that we see is in mixed air applications where there's not enough space to get an averaging sensor, a standard or copper averaging sensor across that entire space. I think that answers all of the questions. Thanks again for joining us today. Please let us know your feedback by emailing me. My contact information is on the screen, and we're looking forward to speaking with you again soon. Thanks again. Have a great day.